Welcome to episode 22 of the Fun Dad, Dean and Wife Unfiltered podcast. I am Dean.
And I am Sarah.
And we have started this podcast with a true representation of parenting.
We are here to give you realistic, unfiltered podcast. We are just two normal parents who are attempting to navigate the ups and downs of parenting whilst trying to have some sort of social life.
Today, we are absolutely thrilled to announce that we have two very special guests joining us. Before we introduce them, can we just give you a little bit more context?
So, as many of our listeners know, I am a teacher, and as part of my role, I often have to attend a lot of training. And I recently completed an NSPCC course about online safety for children. And to put it bluntly, it terrified me. I was straight on the phone to Dean, really concerned and just quite shocked, actually, at some of the things that I learned on this course. So I started sharing my concerns with Dean and with friends, and ever since we've basically been educating ourselves as much as possible about a topic I am sure most parents can relate to. So today we will be covering smartphones and social media for children. And as part of our research, we stumbled across a page that has recently blown up over the last few months, and that is Smartphone Free Childhood. So we are so excited to welcome today the founders of Smartphone Free Childhood, Daisy and Joe. Welcome, Daisy and Joe. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Welcome, Joe, Daisy. Great to have you.
And just really can't wait to delve into this conversation. But I just want to say to our listeners that no matter what age your child is, this is a national problem. From toddlers watching YouTube to teenagers and Snapchat, stay tuned and listen as we debate the future of our children.
So tell us, what inspired you to start Smartphone Free Childhood?
Well, it wasn't really an intentional decision to start what it's become. It started off just me and a friend were really worried because kids in our daughter's classes were starting to get phones. They were 8 at the time, and this was in February. So we said, "Oh, should we start a WhatsApp group for each other, and we can try and wait and see if we can, and we can share any newspaper articles or any research that we see to encourage each other to do it." So we set that up, and then I posted about it on social media, and it went viral, and thousands of people joined the group, and then. That one filled up, so we started another one. That one filled up, so Joe started helping because it was just like this crazy, wild tornado of interest. And we decided, let's get people to start them in their own regions. And then really quickly, there was a community in every county in Britain.
Wow.
We said, why don't you start school groups in your school and try and encourage people to make change in your school, because that's where it really matters, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
If your kid's class, that there's other kids who aren't getting a phone, that's where the impact is really. So then people started starting their school groups, and there was thousands of those. So it was just this crazy sort of bursting of a dam, it felt like, and everyone suddenly wanted to have that conversation, which felt really awkward to have before, because it feels like you're maybe judging other parents if you even have that conversation. So that's how it kicked off. And then suddenly we were just sort of doing it because there was not really a choice, it felt like.
Yeah, there was just so much interest and demand for this conversation to be had. Anywhere that it was mentioned or discussed, it just blew up, and the media were really interested in it. And the parents all over the country were sort of putting their hands up and say, yeah, finally someone's talking about this. This is one of the biggest problems in my day-to-day life. It's one of the biggest challenges I face as a parent. And we need to do something about it, because I think everyone has kind of just sleptwalked into this situation where it's become normal to give your kid this supercomputer in their pocket connected to the internet 24/7, typically age 11 at the latest. I think it's by secondary school, 89% of kids have their own smartphone, and most of those are unrestricted. And so almost everyone was saying, yeah, this is a big deal for me. We feel this in our homes, we feel this in our families. Even if you haven't experienced the worst end of the spectrum that we know exists, right? Of some of the awful things that can happen to kids online when they're exposed to the type of content they're exposed to. Even if that's not anywhere near your day-to-day experience, you almost certainly will have battles with your kids. You're going to be annoyed at the amount of time they're spending on these things. It's taking up time they could be doing things out in the real world. And so every parent everywhere was like, yeah, we need to do something about this. And then it just snowballed. And so we decided to kind of stop what we're doing and focus on trying to build this thing and see what change we can make.
I mean,
Because there was all viral momentum, and so we were like, let's see if we can turn this viral momentum into some like real impact, for parents on the ground.
how responsive have schools been? 'Cause you mentioned getting into schools. How responsive have they been to kind of helping with this?
They've been amazingly responsive. I think teachers have been way ahead of the game on this. Like, I think they've seen the problems in their classes for years, and so I think they would like to have kind of made changes sooner, but they felt like parents were going to push back if they did, because parents want to be in touch with their kids and they want to be able to contact them when they're at school. So when there's like groups of parents in the school saying to head teacher, look, we want to change the rules, we want to make take smartphones out of the classroom, out of the school, they were up for it. And all around the country, we've seen hundreds of schools changing their policies, tightening their policies up, and helping parents, basically joining hands with parents to say, let's try and shift this situation for our kids.
Exactly. And I think some of the time is, well, I've seen some of the case studies and the examples that you've shared on your page and maybe on other platforms as well, is actually we've now got a generation of children or, late teens, young 20s, actually turning around and admitting and saying they wish they hadn't had a smartphone. We have got that generation of children coming out the other side of it, old enough, their brain is developed enough to actually reflect back on their journey with their smartphone and thinking, yeah, I wish I hadn't had one. So I think it's about speaking to that generation as well and getting their voice within this and actually saying, well, if children are growing up and they're getting to, 17, 18, 19, 20, and they're saying, yeah, I wish I hadn't have had one, or I wish I hadn't have joined social media, we need to listen to that platform and get their life experiences too.
Yeah, look, you're absolutely right that we hear time and time again, older teenagers who've kind of grown up with this stuff. I think that there's kids who've been teenagers in the last 10 years who've really been the kind of lab rats in this experiment of giving kids unrestricted access to the internet and social media from a very young age. And many of those kids, whilst of course acknowledging some of the positives, and we acknowledge there are so many positives to do with social media and smartphones, loads of them, and I think the majority in some surveys say that they wish they had at least got their smartphones later, or at least got social media later, because they've seen the damage that it's done to some of to them and their friends, and also there's this sort of regret for the time that they've spent, the amount of time they've spent, the time that they've lost, and some kids talk about feeling like they haven't really had a proper childhood because they spent so much time on the internet, which is really sad. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. We need to make sure we listen to those people. It's not just parents, sort of out of touch parents who don't get it, telling kids what to do. Young people themselves know there's a problem here.
Yeah.
I think about memories, I feel like you don't really make memories when you're online. You're not going to look back and be like, oh, do you remember that awesome night? I spent 4 hours on Instagram. It's so great.
I mean, even as adults, you look back at your day and you're like, what have I done? I've just been on my phone or been at a computer, and you're like, you can't remember anything you've done that day, even as an adult. So imagine kids are feeling as well. It's sad.
I think there was a study that I've seen, and it was predominantly done in America, and they studied the brains of children when they were on their smartphones, the short gaming and watching this programs like Cocomelon, that short form, and they likened their brains to that of addicts, drug addicts, alcoholics. When the tablet or technology was taken away from them, there was similarities in their brain scans, and that for me is what I find fundamentally terrifying. That it is a form of addiction. And that really made me reflect in a different way, because like I said, Dean and I are not perfect parents. We don't claim to be perfect parents. This is a journey that we have been on ourselves. We did give our children tablets. We had an iPad throughout COVID. I was, teaching online. Dean was working full time. It was really challenging. And what was easy to do with a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old when you're at home and you're both trying to work? Oh, here's the iPad, off you go.
But then when we took it away from them, it was like, oh my God,
the tantrums.
The rage and you can see how addicted they become to it. It was like, this can't be good. This just cannot be good.
And also something that as well that I think that I've really been reflecting on is that idea about social emotional regulation. So for example, sometimes, you see the children are upset or the children want something, and they might say like, oh, I'll just watch my tablet. Oh, I'll just, have a phone, da-da-da. And actually, that is not a good way to teach your child about social and emotional regulation, how to regulate themselves if they're upset or if they've hurt themselves. That is not okay, because one day they're going to be in a situation where they need to emotionally regulate and that tablet isn't there. And, some of these children, for example, I'm an early years teacher, and, children might come into school and maybe they can't regulate without their tablet because they're so used to having their tablet. Maybe they can't eat their lunch without their tablet because, again, they're so used to having that at home. When it's taken away, it's kind of, what do I do? So I think, although we talk a lot about social media and obviously the age, lifting the age for that, I know that's something Dean wants to come into in a minute, we need to remember that this idea of smartphone use, it isn't just about giving them the phone at 11, traditionally what parents might like to do, or the impact of it social media wise. This is going right down to YouTube and toddlers, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the Ofcom data says that a fifth of 3 and 4 year olds in the UK have their own smartphone, 25% of 5 to 7 year olds. So yeah, it starts really young, and like we totally get that as well. Like it's so we need parents are really rushed. We're so busy. We're like trying to spin a lot of plates, and lots of us don't live near family anymore who can help out. And like traditionally in the past, they would have been there to help that. So we have to rely on tablets or TV to sort of do some of the parenting when we're trying to do all the other things. And parents are sort of struggling. So it's really understandable. But yeah, I think we're getting more and more data now to show that it's actually it's causing. Lots of kids are arriving at school not ready for school because they spent too much time on devices, and it's affecting their social skills, their cognitive skills. And there's a big study out the other day about tantrums, how it raises the risk of tantrums, because a lot of parents use it as a pacifier, and so the child actually increases the length of the tantrums kind of over those later years.
Yeah, there's also something interesting about the length, the shorts, like you mentioned, YouTube shorts, like how the storytelling has gone from, if you watch a kids show on TV, it might be 20 minutes long, and at least some of the stuff our kids watch is absolute rubbish. I wish they weren't watching it, but at least there's a narrative arc, and they're going from there's a beginning, middle, and end to a story, and they're sort of getting deeply into a narrative. Whereas the short form videos that you get on YouTube Shorts or on TikTok or on Snapchat and so on, they're literally just snippets, and they're designed to trigger your dopamine responses, and so they're far more addictive, and they're far less educational. And so there's been this shift to this short form content that we all know as adults as well. We're just hooked into we want more because it's triggering our dopamine responses, and kids just aren't ready to understand that, and there's really very little benefit from showing those kind of short videos to kids.
Before we went on this journey, I could get my youngest to do anything if I promised her YouTube Shorts. Anything. You could get her to do anything. You can watch YouTube, you can watch this. And she was literally like that, excited about it. And then you can just see that is a serious addiction, But a longer form thing, she's not as excited. It doesn't hit their dopamine the same, does it? Like if they're watching a 30-minute thing on BBC, it doesn't quite...
Yeah. I think as well, what we're trying to achieve here as well is, like we said earlier, we are not perfect. We have made mistakes, and we'll probably continue to make mistakes, and we're going on this journey. But having a page like your platform, like Smartphone Free Childhood, just about education and just sparking that kind of thought in parents' brains about, it's not too late. Yes, initially, if you maybe your child's 14, 15 now, and you've given them a smartphone when they started school, and it's caused nothing but issues. I think it's that idea of, can I take it away? Should I take it away? Is it going to affect them socially? But it's about, I think, what you said earlier about coming together collectively at parents and speaking openly about these problems and these challenges that we've got. And it's not too late. In our house now, sometimes they're quite shocked. Oh, they don't have an iPad. I'm like, no. And actually, that's okay for us. And, the girls now, Ruby's very clear now, I'm not allowed to watch YouTube. and we've come full circle with it, and it wasn't
She'll
necessarily
watch
an
it if her
easy
friends are
journey.
watching their TikTok.
Yeah, so
'Cause
that's
their
another
friends
thing.
might
But then,
have,
you know,
like,
it's going around people's houses, and what are they being exposed to at somebody else's house? It's just really difficult, isn't it? And I think the more open we can be as parents, and the more we can discuss it, the better it'll be. And it's not that we're being judgy. That's not the point of this. The point is to just educate and, you know, reflect, I think. Would you say?
Definitely, yeah, because I think when they first came out, it's only been sort of 14 years, I think, since the first iPhone came out, and you know, none of us knew. There wasn't any data. We were all just really excited about this brilliant new, like, little supercomputer, and it was, you know, it brought so many things to our lives. And it's only in recent years that there's been a bit more research and data about that. And so we've got a lot of parents in our community who've made one decision for their older kids, and now they've got new knowledge. They're going to make a different decision for their younger kids, and that's hard to do. But that's your right as a parent to do that, because you're just everyone's trying to do the best for their kids. And if you decide that for your younger kids you want to take a different approach, you can do that. And I think they might be a bit pissed off to begin with, but I think they'll get it in the long run.
It's also important to think about, like, how quickly the technology has changed. Like, it's only in the last few years that the algorithms got so sophisticated that it's triggering that kind of responses from kids when you take it away, that they just can't handle it. Like we can actually remember when Instagram, it was only a few years ago, you'd scroll down to the bottom of your feed and say, you're all caught up now. Like, you've seen all there is to see, because it was like pictures of your friends and the people that you follow. And now it's just like constantly, like,
it's bottomless pit,
feeding you content that it knows that you're going to like. And so there's been such a dramatic shift in, like, how powerful the algorithm is, and that's meant that it's very difficult to resist, particularly when kids get older. It's very difficult to be the only parent saying, I'm not going to give my kid a smartphone, I'm not going to give them social media, when all their friends' social lives have migrated online, right? Because if you're the odd one out in a class, then that's not a great position to be in, and no parent wants that for their kids. But that's why we're saying we want parents to act collectively and all agree collectively to say, no, we're going to wait. We're going to not give our kids phones for a few more years. We're going to give them that time to develop away from these algorithms, away from these devices. And if people do it together, then it becomes 100 times easier, right? If there's 3 or 4 other kids in your friend's class who haven't got a smartphone, then the peer pressure reduces and it becomes much easier to deal with.
I spoke to a friend. So I spoke to a friend at the caravan, friend's daughter, and she was 15, 16. She said if she didn't have a phone at school, she'd have got bullied. Anyone that didn't have a phone or not a smartphone would have got bullied. That's what she instantly said when I mentioned it, and that's quite frightening. So no parent wants that either, and that's why you give in to peer pressure and take the lesser evil in a way. You don't want your kids being bullied. You don't want kids on social media either. But what's the less evil here? And at the moment, it's giving them a phone, definitely.
Do you think? See, I disagree.
No. At the moment, it is because when you go to school, they might get bullied if they don't have. That's what I'm saying. It needs to be a collective push the other way, where it's uncool to have a phone, or it's like less common.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you today, practically, just while I've got you here and I've got your expertise. So as parents, we've now got a 10-year-old, and she almost is seeing it as her right to get a smartphone when she starts year 7. She keeps on asking us. She's in year 5 currently. People in her class have got a phone. People in year 6 have got a phone, and she's almost kind of saying to us, she knows that we're absolutely no when she's in primary school, but she's very much like, but I'm going to get one for year 7, aren't I? But I'm going to get one for year 7. As parents now, what practical steps can we take to kind of alleviate this peer pressure? So actively now, those parents who've got children in year 5, year 6, and they're unsure and they're feeling like they might succumb to the peer pressure, what advice would you give those parents now?
Our daughter is also in year 5, so it's the same situation. We really get that. It starts to mount so much, doesn't it, as you get to that bridge to secondary school. And firstly, we'd say, like, it's not either or. It's not like they are going to get one or they aren't. There's lots of other options you can do in between. And if they haven't had a phone, they're going to be delighted to get like a simple phone in between. And there's actually quite a lot of better options now. So they look like a smartphone, but they've got, like, they don't have social media or internet, but they might have some apps. Something like, there's a phone called the Pinwheel, which just launched in the UK last week, but they've had an American. So no one would know that it wasn't a smartphone, but it's got just safe apps that you as a parent put on the phone yourself, but it's already set up. So that's a really good option for people.
So they can still kind of phone, text, have that level of communication, but not the access to that wider social media internet world.
Yeah, exactly. So it's got like banking apps, it's got Spotify if you want that, it's got hundreds of apps which you could put on if you want to put them on. But so that's an option for people. But what we're asking people to do is sign our Parent Pact, which is something we launched in September, and it's a way you can log on in 30 seconds, sign up, and then say that you want to delay smartphones until your child is 14 at the earliest. And then you can see how many other kids in your school and class are signed up to on the leaderboards. And then, if you can see that there's like 8 other kids in the class, you can say, well, look, Mary's not getting one, John's not getting one. It's fine. We're just going to wait a few more years, and you can get a different kind of phone in the meantime until you're ready for a proper grown-up iPhone.
You have a list. You have a list of phones on your website, don't you? That are kind of good alternatives. I was looking at them. Yeah, they do actually look like smartphones. They don't look like a Nokia. Those old Nokias we used to have. If you took one of them in now.
Yeah. There's loads of Nokias like that, and then there's some better ones, like not better, but more jazzy looking ones. But yeah, the Parent Pact is really. I think we've got 80,000 kids signed up in the first 6 weeks.
Wow.
So it's really at 30% of schools in the country, isn't it?
Yeah, there's been at least one pact signed in a third of schools in the UK. So it's really taken off. There's parents parents see the benefit in this, because that conversation with your daughter is 10 times easier if you can say, well, Eliza, her friend, or Emily, she's also not getting one, and so we're all in this together. That's the whole point of this Parent Pact idea, and we've also got WhatsApp groups in schools all over the country, so parents can discuss this issue with one another and find some solidarity, and you discuss the alternative phones and what you're going to get. And some people go for the classic sort of old school brick phone, but then they put an AirTag in their kids' bags. So they want to track them, because a lot of parents want to know where their kids are. So there are some kind of hack solutions to it as well. But there's also a lot of interesting developments in the market at the moment. So we're working with Nokia. Well, the people that make Nokia phones, called HMD, they're working on a project to try and create the ideal child-safe phone. So a bit like the one that Daisy described, but even more specifically designed for kind of younger kids. So the dream scenario for parents, I think, is a phone that looks like a smartphone, but it doesn't have open internet access. It doesn't have social media apps on it, but you can still do messaging. You can still have music. You can still get maps. It's got all the stuff that's going to help a kid get around as they get a little bit more independence.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have access to the stuff that we know is harmful.
Addictive algorithms, basically.
Because I think a lot of people think as well, as I talked earlier, that I did the NSPCC course that I did as well. And actually, the idea that some parents think that they're giving their child this smartphone and maybe they're setting them up on Instagram or a TikTok or whatever, and they're saying, oh, but they're private. They might be private, but what you're giving them access to is exposure to masses of potential harmful content and also misinformation. And you can very quickly get on a smartphone and very quickly find this content that you think, gosh, has my child been watching that? And it's terrifying. And I think there is an education to be had there. And I know that we were talking earlier, Dean shared the petition to ban social media for under 16s, and that's kind of spread like wildfire, hasn't it? But I had lots of comments saying, well, parents can just say no, but it's much easier to say no if you're like, well, it's illegal. Parents can say no to smoking and drinking because it's illegal. It's such an easier conversation. But yeah, that's spread like wildfire. And I think as well, the current age for a lot of the social medias is 13, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you say got an 11-year-old and you think, oh, it's just 2 years off, whatever, lie about your age, you can have it. But if they're 11 and actually the age is 16, that's a 5-year difference. That's a big difference. So it's easier to alleviate that peer pressure there as well.
Definitely. And if it's a law and that everyone needs to kind of, those tech companies need to adhere to, it means that all kids get protected. Because as it sounds, only parents who've got the time and the kind of headspace to protect their kids from what they might see online are protected. So that means it's actually a social justice issue, because all these kids are you know, we know that kids in poor homes, kids with special needs, kids with LGBTQ or all these kind of things, they're much more exposed to the harms of the internet than kids with families who have that time to be able to protect them. So that's why it's also important to, like, we've got to change the law for all kids.
And I think as well, while they're young, it was a story I wasn't sure I wanted to tell, but I feel that Dean and I, we do put quite a lot of our lives into this podcast, and we do put ourselves open on the table, and we do make mistakes. And in the summer, like we say, you might not know this, but we have a caravan. We talk about it a lot on the podcast, and we go there for weeks at a time, and the children have a lot of safe freedom there, and it's great. And this was the first year that I'd seen a little bit of a shift, because some of the children down there now have phones. They watch different social media platforms, and it was very new to Daisy, and she was very excited by it, and she was like, wow. Anyway, she at the time had a little iPod Touch. It's since gone. You will understand why in a moment. And she'd been watching videos with her friends, and we were trying to discourage it as much as we can. Let's go on a walk. Let's go and do this. Let's go down the beach. But inevitably, they're going to spend a little bit of time in their friends' caravans, and it happened. Anyway, she showed my sister a video sitting in my mum's caravan, and she was so proud of it. And basically, the video showed her pretending to gorge on a load of food and then go to the toilet and throw it up. And she had no idea what
didn't know what that meant.
Didn't know what it was, didn't know what it was related to, but she'd seen that in a friend's caravan, somebody else doing it, so she mimicked it and she copied it, and she showed my sister like she was super proud of this video she'd made.
It was like a trend on TikTok, wasn't it, going around? And she didn't really understand what it meant at all, but, that's what they're being exposed to, aren't they? So
that's just the level at what they're being exposed to, and you just don't know. And honestly, I absolutely was terrified. I really was. And since
bit of a wake up call, wasn't it?
It was a massive wake up call, and you think that was just that. That could have been a lot worse. You just don't know, do you?
Yeah, we hear all sorts of stories in our community of parents from kids of things that they've seen, like beheading videos and awful kids with PTSD because they've been shown like violent porn for 2 hours on someone else's iPad aged 8, and it's often stuff they don't want to see. They're sent it or shown it by other kids, so they're not searching it out. But I think 90% of girls and 50% of boys say that they've been sent or seen stuff they wish that they hadn't. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, can you?
No.
So it's not a safe space for kids. It's not designed for kids.
It's kind of, we talk about it as a new frontier in parenting. Like even 5 years ago, like the algorithms weren't as sophisticated, the devices weren't as sophisticated. You probably didn't have like 3G or 4G everywhere you went. It wasn't long ago you had to go into a cafe to find Wi-Fi to like log onto the internet, right? And like now it's just everywhere, always, and that obviously brings about loads of benefits. But the consequences for the type of the sort of experience of childhood that many kids had are really, really profound. Like that kind of stuff like that your daughter saw and obviously had no idea about what it was. In some ways that's lucky, but that you would never dream of exposing that stuff, having exposed to that stuff in the real world. But as soon as they're on these devices and on the internet, then anything can happen. And that's a kind of a strange situation to be in, because as parents, it's our job to like parent according to our values and like protect our kids and instill the kind of education and lessons that we want to instill in our kids, right? Like that's our job. And so, but as soon as they're on the internet and on social media, suddenly we've got no control over it at all. And that's like that. It feels like there's a mismatch there, and I think that's part of the reason why everyone all over the country is recognizing that something needs to change here.
Yeah.
I mean, other than saying no to our kids, do we need to be on our phones less? Like as parents and adults, I mean, I know I go on social media, but do we need to? Are we like feeding that down to them? Like if we're on it like 6 hours a day, just staring and saying no to them, I mean, do we need to take some personal responsibility as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really important part of the picture. Like we're really bad, particularly since we've been doing this. We're just constantly on our phones trying to manage these things, and there's all these WhatsApp groups and trying to like deal with stuff on social media, like we're constantly on our phones in front of our kids, and we try to be intentional about it, but it's really difficult, isn't it, when like your work revolves around your phone, and like we're all kind of trapped in this world where like everything, you feel like you've got to manage your whole life through your phone. But so there is a distinction, like kids don't need to be on them, whereas adults do to a certain extent. But yes, we're all like victims of how powerful and how alluring and how entertaining these things are, right? They've got like everything you could ever want in your pocket at all times. So it's going to be tempting, right? You're going to look at it the whole time. So it's kind of an easy option. It's an easy out to like always be distracted by your phones, particularly I think when you're parenting, when there's so many little, like you're always doing something, aren't you? They have like 20 seconds of downtime, you're like, oh, I'll just have a look at that because I kind of fill this gap when I'm like in between, I don't know, doing some dropping a kid off or doing some washing or whatever it is. So it's very easy and it's very tempting to spend a lot of time on your phone, but like, yeah, we all have a responsibility to try our best to kind of resist the temptation, because it obviously does have an impact. And, you know, just little things like not having your phone around you, like when you're at meal times or in the like upstairs in the bedroom, and like I think there are some like simple things that we can all do to kind of try and what we describe as dethroning your phone, not give it like not give it hero status in your life.
My screen time last week was about 6 hours and 10 minutes, and I do like run the business off in there, but I was still like, that is disgusting. I like, that is too much for an adult. I try and keep it to, I think 4 is quite a good thing for me.
I think
personally.
It depends what you're doing on it as well.
Yeah,
you know,
I do a lot of creative stuff on it, but still, I'm still wasting quite a bit of time on there as well. So yeah, I definitely need to look at that.
And I think I just wanted to, because this is quite a different, I don't know if you've listened to our podcast, but this is a bit of a different tack for us today. I've kind of gone on a little bit more of a serious journey today having this chat, but it was a discussion that Dean and I really do feel of
I'm
our
massively
journey.
passionate about it. It needs to happen.
It's something we're so passionate about. And for anyone listening who maybe thinks, oh, I've given my child a phone, maybe I could take it away or start those restrictions, the advice is probably to, you know, get that parental support, come together in groups and have these open discussions. And yeah, maybe not everyone's going to agree, but I think it's really important that we do that, because again, on your page, I found it so thought-provoking, everything that you post, because I think one of your posts, we really delved into the impact that smartphones and particularly social media as well are having on the mental health in children. Just some of those statistics that are on hand are alarming.
Yeah, they are. They're really alarming. And you know, I think this really big study that came out last year, 28,000 kids globally, and the younger those kids got a smartphone, the worse their mental health is today. And that's the first generation to have grown up with them. You know, across all things from like self-image, depression, anxiety, and even their kind of the strength of their relationships with other people were all reduced the younger they had a smartphone. Wow. And in the UK, like, you know, levels of mental health amongst young people is just sort of going through the roof. I think in the last 3 years, the chance of a young person having a mental health problem has risen by 50%, and emergency referrals have risen by 53%. So, I mean, the NHS is struggling to cope. And, you know, it's not all about smartphones, definitely not. It's not all about social media, but it's got to be a factor.
Massive factor.
It's been a huge, you know, since smartphones came out and since 2012, there's been a spike globally all around the world in mental health in young people. So, yeah, I think it is definitely one that parents need to know about and consider.
And the government.
That's one of the biggest things that like parents are worried about. And obviously we've talked a bit about harmful content as well, like the kind of stuff that kids can be exposed to on smartphones and social media. And there's so many other issues like distraction. Kids like, you know, get ping notifications all day, and that means that they're far less likely to do well at school if they're like constantly distracted by their phone next to them when they're trying to do their homework or in class even. It's really bad for sleep. So if you've got a smartphone, if you're looking at it late at night, or if it's even like in your bedroom, then obviously that's going to be like a distraction. It's going to be impacting your sleep, which we know is really, really detrimental to the kids. And the biggest, like one of the biggest things that we're sort of worried about, I think parents are worried about all over the country, is this opportunity cost for like what are kids not doing when they're on their phones? If a kid's spending 7, 8, 9 hours a day on their smartphones, which we hear loads of stories of kids spending that kind of amount of time, then it's actually really sad to think of like the social interactions or the hobbies or the exploring or like just going to the park with their friends that they're not doing. Even your example of your kids in the caravan, like, you know, until everyone around them started getting smartphones, they were off playing, and then suddenly they're off kind of looking at screens. And so that's a big part of this as well.
I mean, when I was sorry, just point on that. When I was a kid, I used to play golf all day, every day. Mum used to drop me down there at 8 o'clock, pick me up to dark. Kids are not doing that these days. My brother's a golf pro, and he says they play one round and they're in on their phones. They haven't got the same interest that we had in the sport, and they're not as good at it or not. You know, it's just one example of that.
Yeah, I think we've all got examples of that, and like and those kind of things are how kids learn the skills they need to be adults. Like, it's all fun, but it's also like really vital stuff. And if you haven't spent that time face to face with people, just talking and learning how to be with people, then, you know, that's going to affect you as an adult. You're not going to be able to do it.
And I think as well, as a teacher, I'm on a lot of teacher forums. Obviously, there's a lots of schools in our partnership. I know a lot of teachers, and there's a lot of discussions that are often had. And I think another reflection that I've had is seeing children come through, and yes, there are some amazing educational apps out there. And I do still think that some of the apps, there's absolutely a place for them. You know, the times tables learning and some of the maths games that you can see in the phonics games. Yes, there is a place for those. And but what we sometimes are seeing as professionals, what I've been seeing in forums online and things, is that actually children are starting school and they can navigate with their fingers and they can swipe, but they can't hold a pen or a pencil, and they can't hold a paintbrush, and they don't kind of have that what we call fine motor in your fingers. So that's your dexterity. It's the small muscle movements in your fingers. They're very good at swiping, but they're not very good at drawing or colouring, or even things like threading, using scissors. They're even putting a puzzle together. A lot of children I see can do a puzzle on an iPad, and they can fit all the pieces together. And sometimes the parents are super proud. You know, oh look, so-and-so's done a puzzle. But then you put an actual real life puzzle in front of them, and they can't do it. So I think we talk a lot about social media, Dean and I do, but it's actually delving right even down to this smartphone use at a toddler level, at a baby level, because hearing a story read, there's so many stories online now as well. The CBB story time, that is not the same as a story being read to you in real life. And I suppose we could go on about it all day, and we still make mistakes. But I think, had I have known what I know now,
we're not perfect. I don't want people to think that we're perfect at all.
But had I known of what I know now, I would have changed lots of aspects of my children growing up.
Yeah, we were very quick to just go, just have the iPad, just have my phone or whatever. We definitely were. We're much better now. We are getting better, but there's still a way to go in there.
I think that's only through education, though. That's why we wanted to come on here and do this platform today with you guys, because you've had, without knowing it, such an impact on us as parents. And I'm sure you have for, hundreds of thousands of other parents out there as well that have been part of your movement and seen the page. And I think it's all about education and reflection. And not everyone might agree with us, but all we can do is put out.
I mean, are there any positives for kids to have smartphones? Like, counter argument this, are there any in your eyes?
Oh,
well, that's a tricky one, isn't it? It depends. I guess it depends the age, and there are loads of positives to smartphones, aren't there? For us, but then there's a sliding scale, isn't it? Where at some point that smartphone is actually stopping them from playing and sort of having the sort of childish and childhood experiences that you want them to have. But then when you're getting to the age of like 13, 14, 15, 16, then I guess maybe it depends to some degree on the child.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the challenges with this whole topic, is that, of course, there are amazing things about these pieces of technology. Like, there's some of the most advanced pieces of technology ever invented. Like, someone said that smartphones got more processing power than the rocket that Apollo 13 or something. It's crazy, like how we forget, because we've been through this technological change, how fast this has happened. And so, yes, there's loads of amazing things that kids could do on smartphones, but at what cost? What are we sacrificing for that? And it's the same for us as adults, right? We all feel the pull of these things because they've got everything that you could ever want within them. So yeah, there are good things about them, but I think what we're just saying is like, you've got your whole life to get good at getting on smartphones, right? You've got your whole life to learn social media and to spend as half your day on your phone or on your device. Like, it's not necessary when kids are young to have these devices. It's been so recent, and some of these things that we've just been describing about, like, kids not being able to do puzzles or coming to school good at swiping but not good at writing. Like, this is like a blink of history's eye. Like, children have been doing that stuff for millennia, and just like that's how childhood has operated. And suddenly that's shifting, suddenly that's switching, and it's so fast. And actually, like the consequences of that are really quite profound and meaningful and troubling when you start thinking about it in those terms. So yeah, it's not like these devices are inherently evil, but we're just saying this technology is so powerful that we have to stop and think and, like, in our minds, just like wait as long as possible to give our kids access to it. Because the other thing that I think is really, really important to consider is kids don't need to be bored anymore. Like, because if a kid, even if it's a slightly older kid, 11, 12-year-old, when you were describing like going and playing golf theme, I was really into golf when I was that age as well. A similar story. I just go off to the golf club, play 3 rounds and go home when it was when someone me up. What else were you going to do? And now, like, it's just so you've always got that easy option, and that applies to any moment. Like, and actually, being bored is a really important part of like childhood development. You start to use your imagination. You start to invent games. You start to get up to stuff you probably shouldn't get up to, and then take risks and discover yourself. Like, and I think that's one of the really most significant parts of this is that all of us actually. Yeah. We never have time on our own. We never have time to be bored anymore because you've always got this thing. And we're only starting to discover the consequences of that.
Yeah.
I'm more creative when I'm bored. If I'm just sitting there like staring, I've got all these ideas come in my head. Or you could just simply go to your phone. Those ideas don't arrive. And that's what you're saying there, isn't it?
I think as well, we love on this podcast, we have a lot of debates and not everybody agrees, and that's absolutely fine. But for all our listeners listening today, if you take just one thing from the conversations that we've had today, we'd love to know what would it be. Has it highlighted something that maybe you didn't know before? Will you be reflecting on your child's use of technology, or maybe you disagree? Whatever your opinion, we would love to hear from you, because we love a debate on this podcast. So please do reach out, and we would like to further the discussions.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I just want to say, Daisy and Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you're taking time out of your day to work on this movement, and that you're really passionate about it. So is there anything else you would like to end with today?
Thank you for having us, guys. It's really, really nice to chat to you about it. And I don't know if there's anything else we should...
I just think that if anyone listening to this is interested in what we're up to, then obviously you guys discovered us through our Instagram page. Check out our Instagram, but also look at our website and look at the Parent Pact. That's the thing that we think is really going to make a big difference to kids everywhere and to parents everywhere. You can go on wherever you are in the UK, you can go on, you can find your region, you can look at the leaderboards of schools of other parents who've signed their kids up to delay getting their kids smartphones, and you can sign it too. And the more parents that sign that, the easier it becomes for us all to manage the situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. It's been fun.
Bye. Cheers.
Right.